Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance. All backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
Welcome to the Fallout Lore, the podcast that explores the boundaries of our knowledge about the world of Fallout. The Fallout series is unique for a number of reasons, but one of the most interesting things about the entire breadth of Fallout content is that it has come in, I don't know the best expression for it, fits and starts. It has come from major tentpole games like Fallout 1 and 2 or 3 or New Vegas, but it also shows up in all sorts of other ways. For example, there are a series of spin-off games, Tactics, Brotherhood, Fallout Shelter for mobile phones, and other sources that get referenced all the time, like the Fallout Bible, along with the TV show and other things that people have put online, things that have leaked, content that has been in the games but wasn't actually in the games. It was just in the game files, and it was something they had to scrap. And what this does is it leads the community to do a lot of speculating about what this other content is and how it fits into the greater canonicity of the entire series, which, of course, I've talked about this many times, becomes a very debated point. But what this means is that there are things like vaults that show up in some of these other locations that haven't been in a mainline game, and yet have not just captured the imagination of us, the fan base, but because of that, they've become kind of like a pseudo-canon sort of thing. For example, we'll be discussing in this episode Vault Zero, the secret vault, which seems to be hinted at in the TV show, even though it comes from Tactics and is not in any of the mainline games. Or Vault 77. This comes up all the time. People have written to me, why didn't you do an episode about the vault with the man with the puppets? And there's a reason for that. When I originally, years ago, went through all of the canonized vaults, that's what I did. I stuck to the canonized vaults, not the ones that were full of speculation and minimal amounts of details. And I did that for a few reasons. First of all, I wanted to make sure that I started with the ones that we were 100% sure of to just set a foundation. But then also, a lot of times these other vaults were very small, and so they didn't really fit into their own episodes. And yes, I combined vaults in a few of the episodes, but you get the point. They weren't as important as these other ones, so I didn't do them at the time. But with enough requests from all of you and some updated information, for example, the story about the Puppet Man continues. It was originally a penny arcade strip, and they've decided to go back and continue that story, which I'll get into details about. And like I said, Vault Zero is being hinted at by the ending of season 2 of the Fallout TV show. So these are things that are right on the precipice of canonicity. And I wouldn't be surprised if in future games or in future seasons of the TV show that we don't see some of the ones listed in this episode that I'll be covering become official canonized vaults. So let's kick this off with the Puppet Man, Vault 77.
You gaze upon one of America's greatest minds, preserved through the miracles of science.
So the story of Vault 77 and the Puppet Man begin outside of the games. They begin with an idea from Pete Hines. And if you recall Pete, he hasn't been part of Bethesda now for a few years, but he was in charge of their marketing. He held a variety of different titles at the company. But back when Fallout 3 was about to be released, he had an idea. What if Penny Arcade, the popular webcomic, which is still active and was the progenitor of the whole PAX thing, you know, the video game conventions, that sort of thing. Well, Penny Arcade, back in the late 2000s, was a popular webcomic. A lot of us were reading it and popping it in, checking out every so often the new updated comic strips and all of that. And they covered a variety of popular games because the two creators of the comic liked playing games and they had some funny things to say about them, right? Well, it had become popular and Pete Hines decided that it would be really cool if not so much in a paid for marketing spot sort of way, but more of just a organic sort of way if the comic were to happen to write some stuff about Fallout. And so from what I've seen, it seems like he reached out to the guys and they were really cool with the idea because they were fans of the Fallout games. And so they decided to create a comic strip about a vault. And this became Vault 77 and the Puppet Man. Now, I know just in the last episode, I broke down one of the fandom.com entries about 1984 and how they got some stuff wrong. But I'm going to rely on them for a synopsis of those comics because it's a lot more convenient than having to go back and write my own synopsis. So here, this is just so you guys know the story of Vault 77 and the Puppet Man. According to the fandom.com Fallout wiki site, it says, upon entering Vault 77, the dweller was confused as to where the other residents were, screaming, "Hey, you forgot all the other effing people." In the first few months, the Vault 77 dweller went through the initial panic and depression caused by being locked alone in a vault. 1 year, 3 months, and 12 days after the sealing, the dweller opened a crate that was left in the vault marked P13X U.S. government issue puppet ration. Inside, he found puppets of a dog, later named Reverend Hound, the local clergyman and sheriff, and grandma and a king. Over the following months, each developed a personality as he engaged in an extended puppet show to stave off boredom and ease his loneliness. He came to regard his new neighbors as Grandma, the King, and Reverend Hound. Later, he heard a voice from inside the crate and discovered a Vault Boy puppet he had originally overlooked. One day, the King was, quote, murdered and found with his head ripped off. The Puppet Man asked the Vault Boy puppet if he did it, as he doubted Granny or Reverend Hound could ever do such a thing. Vault Boy, quote, confessed not only to the murder, but also admitted to the fact that the Puppet Man was his accomplice. The Puppet Man realized that Reverend Hound would come for them both and decided to leave the vault. His initial excursion lasted less than a minute, and after opening the vault door, he encountered a gigantic rad scorpion holding a car in each claw. He immediately closed the door and decided to sleep on it. The Vault 77 dweller was eventually successful in leaving the vault and acquiring a giant ant named Mr. Pinch as a mount. He was very optimistic in regards to his journey and mused to himself that while it was hot out for December, he was never one for snow anyway. He also encountered a mysterious one-armed ghoul wearing a vault suit without a visible number. The Puppet Man was later captured by two slavers and warned them not to mess with his Vault Boy puppet, as the puppet was crazy and had killed before. One of the two slavers, Bob, contemplated whether to make the Puppet Man a slave or if he should serve him as food. The second remarked that he was pretty hungry. The Puppet Man killed Bob, then tracked the second man to his base where he was in the middle of warning fellow slavers about Bob's fate. The slavers were interrupted by a repetitive clanging noise, signaling the Vault 77 dweller's arrival, and he is called the name the Puppet Man for the first time. He kills the slavers barehanded, save for the Vault Boy puppet on his right hand shortly after. The Puppet Man's location and living status is currently unknown. The lone wanderer can find the Puppet Man's Vault 77 jumpsuit in Paradise Falls, slavers' possession, along with a holotape labeled fearing that a stranger with no name may come back for revenge. However, nobody has followed through with burning it. The Vault 77 jumpsuit grants a +5 to both unarmed and melee weapons. Supposedly, the sight of it freaks the boys out. So there is that vault suit, which of course never turned into anything in the game because it was cut content, meaning that there wasn't the Vault 77 in the game. It was something they decided that maybe they were going to do, I guess, and they just left a vault suit somewhere with 77 on it. And then Penny Arcade took the idea and ran with it. And for a long time, that was the entire story. That's as much as we knew about Vault 77. That's as much as we knew about the Puppet Man. And the story was over. Because again, nothing showed up in the games and the comic ran its course. Until April 17th of 2024, when they decided to continue the story in the comic. We got this panel in the comic, which shows two of the slavers returning to what appears to be their base. One of them says, "All right, now, when we get up there, don't look him in the eye." Him who? Effing either of them. Just say, like, "My lord, can we get a dip off that well?" And if he says no, we just back out, bowing and stuff. Obviously, I'm trying to keep this episode clean as much as I can. And the final panel, we see the Vault Dweller from 77, the Puppet Man himself, with the Vault Boy puppet. And the puppet is saying, "What the F do you want?" And the Vault Dweller then says, "Oh, look out, fellas. He's in one of his moods," implying that the Vault Dweller is so crazy that he has taken over the slavers and is now running the show. And this is great. 16 years later, they decide to continue the story. And this has sparked all sorts of debates online. If you follow through this thread into the Reddit posts and those kinds of things, there are a lot of people who are commenting on their headcanon for his history and who he is and when he might have been born. Was he before the bombs dropped or not? And is that vault suit his vault suit? And all of this stuff, which of course we have no firm information on. So all of it is simply headcanon. People are just piecing things together and making assumptions about what that means, like usual. And yes, I do it too. So yeah, we all do it. And it's part of the fun. But now we have the continuation of the story. But what this means to me, though, is even more interesting in light of the events of the last week. Now, the last episode I put out was a very quick response to the layoffs and the potential future of the series, and Obsidian getting the opportunity again, or being told to, however you want to phrase that, to make another Fallout game. And this left a lot of people speculating about all sorts of things. After the initial news came out, there was a run of YouTubers all jumping to extreme conclusions in order to condemn Bethesda and report controversial and negative news because it gets clicks, saying things like, "Bethesda lost the rights to Fallout. They no longer control the series," and making all of these big jumps. And then, of course, a few days later, we get interviews with Todd Howard and we get updates on the status of what's actually going on in Fallout. Turns out Obsidian's going to be working with Bethesda Game Studios together on the new Fallout title, with Bethesda Game Studios working as more of a guiding hand on the project, which means that they still have control of the series. It was also revealed officially for the first time that not only are they still working on another Fallout game after they finish Elder Scrolls 6, which will probably be something like Fallout 5, but they have been working in the background with probably the studios that they worked with on Oblivion Remaster on new remasters for both Fallout 3 and New Vegas. And I'm going to pat myself on the back here because I've been pretty sure of that for a while and have been preaching the gospel of the remasters. And now it seems like it's officially confirmed. So that's good news. But what does that mean for Vault 77 and the Puppet Man? It means that there is an opportunity while they are still working on Fallout 3's remaster to put more of this in the game. Can you imagine if they inserted a Puppet Man character somewhere in Fallout 3's Wasteland? Or even more interesting, actually added another vault and we could go inside Vault 77 and see what hellish world he was in that drove him so crazy. I think it was just being alone for a really long time that did it. But there you go. Exciting news for Vault 77 and the Puppet Man finally out there and worth highlighting in an episode. Let me know your thoughts. Tell me if you think this is something that seems like it'll come out in Fallout 3. My gut says they're not going to add anything more to it because the amount of new things they added to the Oblivion remaster was fairly minimal, but it doesn't mean it's not possible. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
How may I help you, alleged member of the living?
So at the end of season 2 of the Fallout TV show, they seem to be hinting at a vault in the mountains that was a control vault. A place specifically designed to be the central hub of the entire Vault network. Now, we have to keep some things in mind here. First of all, the TV show is canon, 100%. The things that the TV show reveals, any changes they make to the storylines, is in the minds of Todd Howard and Bethesda, who still own the rights, well, underneath Microsoft. Microsoft technically owns the rights, but together own the rights for Fallout and therefore can decide how they're going to take the series in the future, what things they're going to retcon, what things they're going to leave the same, all of that. And if you ask them which games in the series are canon, and this is important because Vault Zero only shows up in Fallout Tactics, you get a list like this, which was revealed on April 11th, 2024 by Emil Pagliarulo. I'm going to totally butcher that, and we're just going to leave it in. But here's the list that they gave us. And this is by date of events. Bombs Drop 2077. Yep, totally knew that. Fallout 76 2102. Again, totally knew it. Fallout 1 2161. Then Fallout Tactics 2197. Then Fallout 2 2241. Fallout 3 2277. Fallout New Vegas 2281. Fallout 4 2287. The Fallout TV show 2296. We don't see Brotherhood, we don't see Shelter, but we do see Fallout Tactics. Now, this is a game that many of us have not played because it didn't review very well, but it does have its fans. There are people who are like, no, Fallout Tactics is great. But there are some reasons why, from a lore perspective, Fallout Tactics is contentious. First of all, there are some inconsistencies with Fallout 1 and Fallout 2. For example, inside Fallout Tactics, there are telepathic Deathclaws and Deathclaws with fur, which is contradictory to some of the details about the species established in the first two games. Specifically, how do they have fur if they are evolved from iguanas? Iguanas are reptiles. Fur doesn't really fit with that very well. But then also, some are telepathic, and that's kind of a big new thing that just obviously stands out in Tactics compared to the other games in the series. Even the games that come after this don't seem to use that again. It also features the Midwestern Brotherhood, which is a completely different group of the Brotherhood of Steel. And this group is more willing to recruit super mutants and ghouls and other wastelanders. And their designs are very different. They feel like a spin-off of the main group with some significant changes to their ideology, which of course sets some people off. But even then, the tech and the tone of the game are both very different. For example, there's more real-world weaponry in Tactics than you find especially in the later games in the series, but then there are also working vehicles that don't feel as 50s, 60s retro future kind of style that the rest of the series is known for. And there's more than that. It's not a comprehensive list by any means, but it's an example of why this is contentious. It also wasn't by Black Isle, who worked on the first two games, the studio that later many of the staff became Obsidian, thus the connection to Fallout New Vegas. But it wasn't also designed by Bethesda. This was before Bethesda gained the rights to Fallout 3. This was a different studio completely. Microforte in Australia. So you can see why people in the community are kind of hesitant about including Fallout Tactics in the canonized list of games, or at least a list of details like vaults and characters and factions and the history of the world, all of that kind of stuff, because it does distinctly feel different. Heck, there's even a Vault Boy companion, which reminds me of Chip in his show. But yes, you can have a companion that is a Vault Boy. He goes by just simply the name Pip-Boy, and as far as we can tell according to the game and the lore, is not a human or even any known species in the wasteland. He is literally a Vault Boy walking around going by the name Pip-Boy. And you can use him in combat. He gets unlocked at a certain point in the game. Like, he is legitimately a character in the game, which is kind of weird. It would be like running into a Bottle and Cappy who were an actual Bottle and Cappy. Now, maybe he's a robot like they would be or something like that. I don't know. But my point being that there's weird stuff in here that just doesn't show up other places. But in spite of all of that, there are things that show up in Fallout Tactics and the Fallout Bible and Van Buren, the never-released Fallout 3 that Black Isle was working on. And there are some ideas from each of those things that show up other places. Some of the ideas that never made it out in Van Buren actually show back up in New Vegas and get realized in New Vegas. Some of the ideas in the Fallout Bible eventually made their way into the games. And just like that, the concept of a Vault Zero from Fallout Tactics seems to be working its way closer and closer into actual canon in whatever version they decide to reveal this in the TV show. Now, when we initially got the reveals and the trailers for season 2 of the TV show, and we saw a vault that appeared to be a Vault-Tec office location underground with cryogenic chambers, my first thought was that maybe that is Vault Zero, or this is the TV show's version of a Vault Zero without necessarily calling it the Vault Zero. And it does seem to be kind of inspired by Vault Zero, but due to the end of the season, it appears like there's actually a Vault Zero, a actual nexus, a hub to everything somewhere in the mountains of Colorado. And that makes sense because Vault Zero is in the Cheyenne Mountain complex of Colorado in Fallout Tactics. Also, this was a location where they kept in cryogenic stasis some of the top geniuses of the pre-war world. Inside this location, the residents were all hooked up to a computer, a supercomputer called the Calculator. And this was supposed to be sort of like a collaboration between not just all of these pre-war geniuses, brilliant minds, but also the technology to kind of bring them all together to design and also nurture this perfect human society, an ideal utopia. The method for doing this would be by educating the survivors and the residents. Now, if this feels too perfect for a Fallout game, then it probably is. It also feels a little bit contrary to our general understanding of Vault-Tec. Vault-Tec wasn't worried specifically about re-educating the survivors and residents in order to make the world better. They had their own goals for power and how they were going to rework the world to be better for them, not necessarily for everyone else. So the premise seems close, but yet still kind of separated. But of course, things don't go to plan. The Vault has budget issues. The Department of Defense cuts the budget, and because of this, the Neuralink system is not completely functional. It doesn't have important backups, and it doesn't have, well, the rest of the tech that would have made it safer to use. So what happens to the people who were plugged in here? Well, most of them suffered some form of brain damage, including things like, well, basic cognitive defects, but also dementia and other issues, including radiation exposure. This, along with other flaws that were happening with the computer system, the calculator, meant that the calculator didn't actually follow through with the original plan, which was to release a bunch of these robots out into the wasteland in order to make things safe for humanity, to re-educate everyone and do all of that. Instead, it switched to the pacification protocol, which meant that the robots that at one point might have saved humanity decided to exterminate all life. Now, spoilers on a 25-year-old game at this point, but this is the end game of Tactics. The calculator, the robots, they are the primary villain and the reason why you and the Brotherhood and your companions have to stand up against them in order to defeat them and save the wasteland. Yay, heroes, that sort of thing. So again, outside of Tactics, we don't see Vault Zero show up in any of the other games, but this would be a very interesting location for, I don't know, a group like the Enclave who are interested in all of that tech and the goals of cleansing the wasteland feel very in line with the Enclave. But not only that, if this was a hub location that is connected to every other vault in the system as a master control center, and yeah, I have some assumptions that because of the communication network across the vaults, as we see, for example, in the TV show, where Vault 33 can send a message to Vault 32, that sort of thing, that all the vaults, or at least originally the vaults, were designed to be connected to all the other vaults. But that still doesn't mean that they are all equally as powerful or have authority in the technology of the vault systems. A place like Vault Zero would be the main place to go if you want authority and control over the entire system and every vault in the system. So you can see why this would be a very important location, not only for the Enclave, but for the story of the TV show as well. Now, we know that they're working on season 3. They've already started shooting it, and they haven't specifically listed a release date yet, but usually it's about 6 months after the shooting is finished that we'll get a TV show would come out 6 to 9 months, something like that. So I would anticipate that by this time next year, we're going to know the answer. Does Vault Zero actually show up in the show? Is it called Vault Zero, or is it given a different name? And what does this mean? What does this mean for the series? Does this mean that we'll get Vault Zero references in Fallout 76 updates, or in the remasters, or in the next mainline Fallout game? If this becomes something highlighted and important to the TV show, I bet we will get references in something. I like chewing gum. You like chewing gum. Probably. Most of us like chewing gum. But what if your gum actually did something more than just taste good and make your breath better? I mean, think about it. You brush in the morning, you brush in the evening, but then you go for like all day without taking care of your teeth. And that's why I've been trying Underbrush from Nathan & Sons. It's not really regular chewing gum, it's remineralized chewing gum. It's basically oral care in gum form. It tastes great, and you chew it for like 5 or 10 minutes, you spit it out, you move on, or you keep on chewing it if you like it. And sometimes I have a second one, or a third one. I mean, they taste real good. Can you blame me? And it's made from hydroxyapatite. I hope I pronounced that correctly. It's the same mineral that the enamel on your teeth is made from. It comes from natural saps like mastic and spruce. So it's got this like firm, satisfying chew. It's not so plasticky or rubbery. And did I mention I really like the flavor? I really like the flavor. And I'm feeling healthier about my mouth and my teeth. It's a good feeling. The company is only a few years old, and the team is literally making and packing and shipping gum every day, made in the US. So if you want a simple daily upgrade for your teeth, check out Underbrush by Nathan & Sons. That's Underbrush from Nathan & Sons.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
Now, I've got one more vault to talk about on this episode as we get closer to the end. This one isn't nearly as important as the first two or as interesting or entertaining, but it does show up in a similar way to these other vaults in a piece of content that has inspired the games and made our imaginations run wild, the Fallout Bible. Now, I did an entire episode on the Fallout Bible, and I didn't cover every little detail in it, but there is a lot there, and there are a lot of details like Vault 29 that show up in the Fallout Bible that have not been realized yet in any of the games. Now, as a reminder, the Fallout Bible was a series of posts referencing design documents, FAQs, some of the lore written by Chris Avallone about what was going on during the times of working on Fallout 2 and around the time of Fallout Tactics. And some of these ideas have shown up in other places, and some of them haven't. One that hasn't yet is Vault 29. Vault 29 was supposedly populated entirely by children, with no adults allowed. You can see echoes of this in some of the other vaults. The main reason for this was to see what it would be like if children were 100% disconnected from the cultural baggage of old world adults. The idea here is that the machine, the Zax AI running the vault, would be their caregiver. This is going to be their parent, and that parent isn't bringing any of the cultural influence that the adults would have brought to this group of children who were in the vault. Now, it's heavily implied that this becomes a Lord of the Flies kind of situation where the children build their own power structure, and some of them are much more violent and abusive towards the others in order to gain power and control over the vault. It's Lord of the Flies, just without Piggy. Unless somebody like Harold is kind of like Piggy. I don't know. That analogy doesn't go very far, but there is speculation in the community that characters like Harold, you know, the guy with the tree coming out of his head that turned into a tree in Fallout 3, might have originally been from Vault 29. He states things like he was born in 2072, which means he still would have been a child in 2077. He also says that he was in a vault. So child in a vault, Vault 29, that seems to make sense. But a lot of the other vaults also had children of the parents who were let into the vault go into the vault with them. So it's not a home run for the lore speculation, but it does fit. And it wouldn't be a surprise to see that later on this gets revealed that, yes, in fact, Harold was in Vault 29. So possible, but not the only possibility. There are some other vaults that kind of fit into this not quite canon, but sort of out there kind of thing, like Vault 113 or 117, because you can find them in the Fallout 4 files as unfinished assets. So it seems like they were going in a direction for that. Vault 63 in Fallout 76 was able to be seen on the map. You could walk up to the outside of the vault, but you couldn't actually go in it for a long time because they didn't build out that content until much later on. So this was another one of those, like, it's sort of in a game, but it's not really explained things that people speculated about for a long time, but they eventually filled in. Also, we have to talk about Fallout Shelter. It is not canon for the story. It's more of just a fun game that plays with the Fallout world for some of its concepts and its ideas. So when we look at the list of vaults in Fallout Shelter and we see that the number climbs into the hundreds because they just have to keep giving you another number for a vault to go investigate when you send your people out into the wasteland, it shouldn't be taken at face value. The community likes to point to the Fallout Bible and Chris Avalone's explanation at the time that there were only 122 vaults total, but you have to think back to that being now almost a 30-year-old document, and the first two Fallout games being the ones that were actually being worked on at the time. Then you start to realize that that number may have been a working number that they were working with, but of course the series hadn't taken off as much as it has now. And there may even be evidence in the TV show that contradicts this a little bit. So I think the total number is in flux. It may be the sort of thing that we never know a total number, but my guess is it's not 800 or something like that you're going to see in Fallout Shelter. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed that. Time for a quick break. I've got to go thank the patrons, so don't go anywhere.
If you have any questions about Nuka World, I'd be delighted to answer them.
So we've got some new 5-star reviews to read and patrons to thank. So thanks to everyone who helps support the show, patreon.com/Fallout Lorecast. I really do appreciate it. You can get ad-free episodes. You can join us for patron chats. We have a patron chat coming up this coming week on the 29th at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So if you're able to join us and would like to join us and are a Saltron or SentryBot level patron or would like to sign up in order to join us, I have a feeling we're going to be nerding out about all the news about new Fallout games. So come join us. We would love to have you. Also, have to shout out all of our SentryBots, Germinator, Nova, The Main Monkey, and Era. Thank you so much for your continued support. And we have 2 new reviews. I think this one might have come in June, but I think I missed it. It's from C and then a bunch of numbers, 112882833, a bunch of numbers and other stuff, who writes, amazing podcast, absolutely peak. We need Fallout 5. Yes, I would love a Fallout 5. Absolutely. And then this one, which definitely came in on July 10th, from Magnus Fivebone, who says, love this pod. I've been a Fallout fan for many years and a fan of the podcast for many years. This is an amazing pod if you love the world of Fallout like I do. And thank you, Magnus, for taking the time to do that, even though you've been listening for a very long time. I know that there are other people who always tune into the show every week who haven't left a review yet. And if you're one of those people and you want to just help me out for all the time that I've given you something else to be thinking about while, I don't know, driving to work or working out or something like that, then that would be a wonderful way to help me, even if you can't sign up for the Patreon. Also, tell your friends. With the new Fallout 3 remaster coming out, people will be coming back to the series and they're going to have a lot of questions. So please recommend the show to them as well. Also, there are a lot of shows on the network, including other shows by myself. If you're into Lord of the Rings, Elder Scrolls, we've got Elder Scrolls 6 on the horizon, hopefully coming out in the next year and a half or so. Also, if you are into retro games and just the nostalgia of the 80s and 90s, join me and John. John's the guy I went through the new Fallout season with and recapped the previous season half a year ago at this point. But he and I have been playing through a lot of old games. And at some point, I will be playing Fallout 1 on that show. And it's going to be Fallout 1 because it's going to feel like an old game with some really cool lore and some really cool stuff, but it's also going to feel like an old game, and you'll get my perspectives on that. That's Retro Recall, by the way. Go check out Retro Recall. We just covered a number of RPGs that influenced games like Fallout much earlier than Fallout 1. So go check it out. Retro Recall. Thanks for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your week. And if you come across a crazy puppet man, maybe do what he says. All right. See you next time. To plug into everything else we're doing, check out robotsradio.net. Reach out to me on Twitter at robots_radio. Check out the Robots Radio Rocket Club, where you can join me and a bunch of our other creators creating your podcast, starting a new podcast, or helping your current podcast grow. There's more information about that on robotsradio.net as well. And you can always talk with us and the entire community, over 2,000 people on the Robots Radio Discord. Come join us. We'd love to chat with you. See you guys next time. Robots Radio. Games, lore, stories, community. Just press play.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.